Hey guys, and welcome to this video. Today I'm going to be talking about powders, and I'm going to show you this very interesting new product from Becca. This is the light shifter, and I promise that I'm going to do a review of this powder. I'm going to compare it to some other powders that I have in my collection and that I think you might be interested in. I'm going to give you a close swatches of these powders in natural light. So apart from the Becca powder, you've seen all of these other powders on my YouTube channel multiple times. I've been showing these powders so many times, and I have actually a comparison video between my favorite, all-time favorite Givenchy Prisme Libre and the Sisley loose powder. So I'm going to have a link to this video in case you're interested and you want to see comparison of these two powders only. But in this video I'm going to try and keep it short, and I'm going to give you close-ups of the product along with a swatch, and I'm going to give you my thoughts about each of the powders here. Okay, so let's go ahead and start with the Becca Light Shifter, and I have this powder in the shade 1. So this is supposed to be a finishing powder. It is supposed to be also setting powder. So on the back it says Light Shifter Finishing Veil. And I think that this product is supposed to be used as a finishing powder. I wouldn't really use it as a setting powder, even though I tried to, but it gives a nice veil, a nice satin veil. So it feels very hard to the touch. I'm going to show you how it looks now on my fingers, and this is a powder that has a satin finish. Okay, so now I want to give you a close-up of the powder and how it looks, and you can probably see as I move my fingers that it's a powder with satin finish. So I wouldn't really use this as setting powder, even though I tried to. I didn't like it used as setting powder, but I like using it as finishing powder as a last step of my makeup routine because it adds a nice veil. It blurs a little bit imperfections, and it reminds me a little bit of the Hourglass powders. Of course, I prefer the Hourglass powders. Now I'm going to swatch it right here so that you can see. And of course, this is a very intense swatch. If I apply this with a brush or even with a sponge, it becomes invisible into the skin. So it's a very lightweight powder. I like it. However, keep in mind that this powder, it has some mirror packaging. The packaging is really beautiful. Now I like this powder, however, it is not my favorite. So the product here is very firmly pressed and it feels hard to the touch. So you definitely have to use a brush that has more dense bristles to pick up the product, or you have to use a sponge. Even though it's a sheer coverage powder, since this is more like illuminating powder, I would say be careful when choosing the color. This is not a translucent powder, so you definitely need to match your skin tone, and I would suggest you to go a shade lighter. If you're in doubt between two shades, I would suggest you to go a shade lighter, definitely, because if you go a shade darker, I don't think that it's going to look beautiful and flattering on the face. I have a feeling that this is from this type of product that if I continue to use it, it's going to get firmer and firmer, and this is one downside of this product. So you can see that it immediately brings a lot of light when I swatch it. Moving on to the Sisley loose powder, and this is one of my favorite loose powders and finishing powders. I absolutely love it. It's not matte and it's suitable for those of you who have dry skin, I think. So it gets a little bit messy, but you can see this beautiful satin finish that it has. It doesn't have shimmers, but it depends on the shade that you choose. Mine doesn't have shimmers because I prefer when my powders don't have shimmers. So once applied on the skin, it is completely invisible and it has a very light blurring effect, which I absolutely love. It glides very beautifully on the skin. However, it doesn't keep my skin matte all day long. So if you have normal to dry skin, I think you're going to enjoy the Sisley loose powder a lot. I love the finish of this powder. I can apply it multiple times throughout the day. However, it doesn't keep my face shine free for longer than a couple of hours, and I have normal to combination skin, so my skin easily gets oily throughout the day, and this powder is not the best one for the summer for me. For the winter, I love using it, but I usually reapply it, and it doesn't matter how many times I'm going to reapply this powder during the day. It never gets cakey, it never creases, it always looks very flawless and very beautiful. So I would absolutely recommend this powder, especially if you have dry skin. I think you're going to appreciate this powder a lot. Next, moving on to my all-time favorite, Givenchy Prisme Libre, and I usually like to use this powder in mousseline pastel, but now I have it in satin blanc. So the difference between mousseline pastel and satin blanc is that mousseline pastel is completely matte, and satin blanc, these powders from Givenchy, they have 4 different colors, and satin blanc actually has one of the colors, the white one, has tiny little shimmers, which camera is not going to be able to pick, but it's not a matte powder. So let me show you. You can see how it has almost like a satin finish, which on the face it looks completely transparent. It doesn't add any shimmer on the face, and you can see the swatch. It basically doesn't, you can't see it. I just swatched it here, but you cannot see it. And this is exactly what I love about this powder. So the Givenchy powder keeps my skin shine free all day long. I don't have to blot, I don't have to reapply this powder. I apply it once in the morning and I'm done for the whole day. And also I love this powder because it blurs a little bit dilated pores. So on the places where I have some dilated pores, it literally erases them. So it's very important also how you use powders, because you're going to get different effects if you use them with different kind of brushes, and if you use them with a sponge, you're always going to get a completely different effect. My favorite way to use loose powders is with a beauty blender, because it helps me to push the product into the skin and it helps me to erase any pores. I have been showing this many times on my YouTube channel, how I like to apply, so I'm not going to get into detail here, but this one is my #1 loose powder. So these two are basically my favorites. I would suggest the Sisley loose powder for dry skin, and I would suggest the Givenchy Prisme Libre loose powder for those of you who have normal to combination skin or oily skin. Moving on to the latest addition to my collection of powders and of loose powders, and this is the Dior cushion powder, and I have a full review of this powder. I also have a full review of the primer that was released together with this cushion powder. So this has very interesting packaging. It has the packaging of a cushion, and I have this powder in the shade Violet. So a similar powder was released during the holiday season by Dior, but it was shimmery, and I don't like shimmery powders on my face. This one is completely matte and it's suitable for all skin tones. It is completely transparent, you can see, and I'm going to have a link actually to the videos where I reviewed this powder. So this powder doesn't have satin finish like the previous powders that I showed you. This one has a completely matte finish, but I like it because it looks absolutely invisible on the skin. The only issue that I have with this powder, the Dior powder, is that it's very challenging to get the powder out. So what I do is I usually don't close the cap here, and then I turn it upside down and I start tapping, because this is the only way to get the product out. Because this is a very, let's say, fashionable packaging from Dior, it is a little bit hard to pick up the product and to get the product out. But again, like any loose powder, I like to apply it with a beauty blender. I think that this powder is suitable for all skin types. It doesn't matter if you have oily skin or dry skin. I think this is going to work equally beautiful. It doesn't look like powder. It sets the makeup for a very long time. It is not as long lasting on me as the Givenchy Prisme Libre. So the Givenchy Prisme Libre is going to keep my face shine free and poreless for a whole day. Personally, for me, this one doesn't last me for a whole day, but it lasts me for good 5 to 6 hours. It can be reapplied. as many times as you like, and it doesn't crease and it doesn't emphasize pores or fine lines. It's a beautiful product that I love. Moving on to the next powder, and the next powder I think is going to be very interesting for those of you who don't like talc in their makeup. So this powder is the loose powder from Charlotte Tilbury, and it doesn't contain talc. So I'm going to show you also, I like the packaging. And this powder is actually very close to the Sisley powder. I'm going to show them to you both. I like the closing here because you can travel very comfortably by just closing the powder and opening it. Now I'm going to clean my fingers before swatching the powder. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury powder. I'm going to just try and swatch it here. It's a little bit challenging to swatch powders because they don't show very much on the skin, but it has a satin finish. So this is not, the Charlotte Tilbury powder is not matte. It has satin finish. I'm gonna swatch a little bit more so that you can see, hopefully. So obviously I'm exaggerating here. It doesn't look visible on the skin, but I'm doing a very intense swatch and I'm applying too much just to show you how the product looks. In attempt to show you how the product looks. So this is the Charlotte Tilbury, and now I'm going to swatch also the Sisley because they are actually very similar in finish. But of course the price of the Sisley powder, this is the Charlotte Tilbury loose powder, is just a fraction of the price of the Sisley powder. I prefer the Sisley powder. This is my personal opinion because the Sisley powder, when swatched, you're going to see that they both have a little bit of pinkish undertone. Okay, so this is the Sisley and this is the Charlotte Tilbury. Now, if I had to choose, I would definitely go for the Sisley powder, but the Charlotte Tilbury powder is also good. It's also suitable for those of you who have dry skin, and it's a fraction of the price of the Sisley powder. So still, it's a very good option in case you want to save some money. Next, I want to show you one Chanel powder, and this is the Beiges Healthy Glow Luminous Color. So this is not the sheer powder, which is matte. This one is not matte. It is illuminating and it's supposed to give you that healthy glow complexion. I'm going to show you now. Now the downside of this powder, I like to use it in the summer. So you can probably see the luminous color of this powder, and I like to use it as finishing powder. Usually I like to use this powder actually when I'm on the seaside. Usually by sunset, I would like to use this powder. I'm going to swatch it right here, and you're definitely going to see the color because this is the Healthy Glow powder. So it looks a little bit orangey, and I'm sure that it's not going to be a good fit for everyone, but I just like it as a healthy touch of color. It is luminous and it has satin finish, so it's definitely visible once you apply it on the face. It gives that very healthy satin finish. And once again, I just love using this powder when I'm on the seaside or for a beach vacation, because when my skin gets tanned, this one looks beautiful. The last powder that I want to show you today is one of my all-time favorites, and it's from Burberry, and it's finished basically, but I just keep it to show it to you. So it's a very nice powder that doesn't look like powder. Unfortunately, in Italy they have darker colors, so I only use it late in the summer because it adds color. So this one is very close to the Light Shifter of Becca. It is one of my favorites, and it's one of the powders that I keep repurchasing. So it is not visible on the face. It gives the most flattering and the most beautiful finish on the face. It's almost like satin finish, but not even a satin finish. It just blurs pores, it blurs imperfections, it adds a little bit of coverage. So carefully with this powder, keep in mind that it adds a little bit of coverage, and that's why I can only use it in the summer, because in Italy we only have this color in a darker shade. You can see when I swatch it that You almost can't see it because it is invisible on the skin, but it's a very good powder. So if it's right in direct sunshine and in natural light, I can see the tiniest satin finish, so it's not a matte powder. So this is the nude powder, sheer luminous pressed powder. So none of the powders that I showed you today has visible shimmers when applied on the skin. Some of them have like a satin finish, but none of these powders has shimmers. The only completely matte powder here is the Dior cushion powder, but still it looks invisible on the face. That was all for today's video. I hope it was helpful. Please don't forget to like and subscribe if you want to see more swatches and close-ups of products that I have purchased and eyeshadow palettes. Check out the swatches section of my YouTube channel. I hope to see you in my next video. Take care. Bye.